This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, absolutely perfect. So, as you know, we're here today with the amazing Salase from Geldards SEN Legal team. We've done a couple of things together now, and I know that the questions we've got, we're going to learn so much today. I know some of you are watching this on playback, but I've sent questions in, but you're not actually here today. And then some of you are here with the questions that I'm going to ask. If it is your question that we are discussing, then, feel free to raise the hand emoji, and we can discuss with you, if there's any further questions that Salase might have as we go through. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Fab.
Looking forward to it.
I am as well, actually. There's some really good questions here, so I am looking forward to it. So, right, let's go for... Well, I'm just going to go in order, actually, that they were sent over. So, I'm putting in a parent request for an EHC plan, but my son is doing okay academically. This is, however, due to the 1 million things we do at home to keep him going and some adjustments at school. His anxiety and tics do prevent him from reaching his potential. He goes to school crying every day. School have made some reasonable adjustments, but I heard with him being okay academically, it's harder to get. What evidence do I need to prove that tics do prevent a child from achieving their true potential?
Okay, so it's really important to, first of all, it's great that you're putting an application in. Just because your child is doing well academically does not necessarily mean that they don't need an education and healthcare plan. Generally, local authority policy is that if they're sort of 2 years behind, then that's when they'll get an education and healthcare plan. That's not necessarily true. That's not the law. The law and the statutory threshold for an education and healthcare needs assessment is the child or young person has or may have SEN 1, which your child does because they have a diagnosis. So they pass that straight away. And the second is that the child or young person may, that's a low threshold, require special educational provision in line with an education and healthcare plan. Now, local authority have to take into consideration all of the additional support that you're putting into place for him. So put that in your plan, put that in your application, I mean. So if you've got a tutor coming in sort of 2-3 days a week, how long they spend with them, if you're taking him to additional classes, if you've got therapies that are putting into place, with everything that the school's putting into place, all those reasonable adjustments that you said. So is he taking, I don't know how old your child is, but for example, if they're at secondary school, are they taking 5 GCSEs instead of 12? Have they got a separate breakout room? What exactly has been? You need to list absolutely everything to show the local authority that, you know what, the only reason why he's academically doing well is because look at this whole big level of support that I'm putting in at home, and look at all of this stuff that we're putting into place at school. If I take that away, then his academics are going to plummet, and that's why his achievements are going to plummet, and he's going to fall behind. And despite the fact you mentioned that his mental health may be declining, or there's some negatives there. If you can say something along the lines of, despite the fact that I'm putting all of this into place and the school are putting all of this into place, his mental health is still starting to decline. So just imagine if I took all of this away, what a sticky spot he's going to be in. And I'm saying that despite all of this additional provision that we're all putting into place, he's coasting just about. He's okay, he's coasting, and he needs more because he's still declining mental health wise. He's not coping. So that's the type of thing that you need to put forward to the local authority. I always say to my clients that, sort of coming from my LA background, I always say this, it's an LA background, but I started with on the parent side. I trained on working for parents and appellants, but from my LA experience, as crude as it sounds, sometimes you are just another case on their desk. So make it easy for them to take you off their desk. Make it easy for them to say no. So you've got a panel panel just want to make the decision and go. So make that decision easy for them. Give them all of the evidence they want, all the relevant evidence that they want. So set it out for them, like even if it's in bullet point format. Say, this is everything that I'm putting into place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is everything that the school are putting into place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the stuff that he needs in addition. Despite all of this, this is where we go. So that's what we want to do for them. We want a roadmap for them. This is all the information you need. This is why it's easy for you to say yes. Have a look at the code of conduct. Have a read through that. If you can quote some bits from the code of conduct and the assessment stage, quote it for them. Make it clear that you're a parent who knows what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. This isn't just a willy-nilly application. You've had a look at the code. You know what you're talking about. Make it easy for them to say yes. But set it out clearly. But I think you've probably got a fair to good chance of getting that granted. I think it's not dissimilar to the applications that I prepare and I make.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think if I'm right, I think the child's about 10. So obviously we haven't done the transition over to secondary yet or anything. So
well,
still got
that is another thing that you should put in there. So 10, he's in year 6.
I think so. I'm pulling this out of the top of my head from a past workshop I ran where she shared a bit of information about her child.
Okay, so year 6, let's say year 6 or year 7. You can also put in there, and obviously adjust the wording depending on either year 6 or year 7. But the point is that's a pivotal moment in a child's life, in that schooling completely changes. As you know, you're not in single classes anymore. You've got 12 sessions, about 12 specialist subjects, 12 different teaching styles. The curriculum becomes more intense. The transitions are more in the day. They're moving from classroom to classroom. They've got to organise themselves better. You know, they've got maybe lockers that they have to take their PE stuff from, or their art stuff from, or whatever it is. It's a huge, if they've gone into mainstream, or they're going to go into mainstream, it's a bigger environment, noisier environment, more socially sophisticated. You know, puberty is going to start kicking in. There's all these additional elements for him that he will have to contend with, that he may not be able to. So I think put all of that in as well, because it's not just he's been doing fine and his academics are okay, he's been coasting, so he doesn't need it. But we can predict, based on the change of environment when he goes into secondary school, that even with all of the support that you're putting into place, it's highly likely that it's just not going to work, because he's been in a primary school, he's been in one classroom, it's been very nurturing. Even if that's been a mainstream classroom, the primary environment is so different. So highlight that as well, I'd say, in your application.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. Okay, is it worth getting an EHCP? My daughter gets 1-to-1 already at college and lots of support now. College do not think so. I'm unsure if it would still benefit her in the future.
Well, is it worth getting it? Listen, it's not guaranteed that the college aren't just going to take that away from her, first of all, because it's not written down anywhere. So they may say to you at the beginning of next term, after half term, whatever it is, reading week, if she's at college, you know what, she's getting on really well, so we don't think she needs it. Or her 1-to-1 resigned, and we can't find a replacement for her, so she's kind of just going to have to get on, and we'll do our best. When she's got a plan, if she gets a plan, that has to be provided. That has to be in place by the local authority, otherwise there are repercussions. Now look at an education and healthcare plan like a contract between your child and the local authority. What's written in section F needs to be provided, must be in place. Otherwise, there are repercussions. You can go for a pre-action protocol letter and make the local authority put that in place, not the school. So at the moment, with her 1-to-1 at college, the responsibility, or you're relying on the college putting that into place. If she had a plan, the local authority would have to put that into place, and that's an absolute duty. I think it's section 42, not that you need to know that, but the section 42 of the Children and Families Act, or 32, I can't remember, I always get the sections mixed up, that whatever's in section F must be put into place. So that's your guarantee. That's your guarantee that that one-to-one that's helping her so much will be put into place. So I would say it's always worth it. It's always worth the application and trying to put into place. But again, it's a matter for you. If you say, well, you know, I trust the school, the college, and we've got a really good relationship, and I don't think it's worth the effort. She's only there for for the rest of this academic year. Then again, that's a matter for you. You know your daughter the best. You know your personal and financial situation the best. So that's your call. What I would ask you to think about is what's she going to do after.
And actually, just before, if I don't mind me stepping in, Mum's actually made the comment in the chat that what about if she goes to uni? Will the EHC follow and benefit her that way?
Right. So if she goes to university, the Children and Families Act stop applying. So plans tend to cease because the Equality Act kicks in when you go to university, and you've got sort of reasonable adjustments and disability discrimination, etc., that come into play when you're at university. Now, the benefit of an education and healthcare plan before university is you're able to show that to the university and say, look at what's been in place for her beforehand. This is how she's been coping, and this is how she's been able to progress. And this is something similar to what she's going to need moving forward, university. What can we do? So that would be almost like a template for them. But that's not to say that you can't sort of go to the university with what she's got in place from college at the moment as well, you know. So yeah, the Education and Healthcare Plan doesn't apply at university. It's the Equality Act. Speak to your universities have sort of inclusion departments, and they have reasonable adjustments, and they have sort of whole departments that assist students with these exams, sort of, you know, access arrangements, etc. So make sure that they're all in place at the uni.
So I'm going to ask you a question based off of that, because I'm not massively familiar with the HCPs. None of my children have them. I thought they went up to age 25.
They do go up to age 25, but at university, a different law kicks in.
Okay.
So
what are the benefits to someone with an EHCP from finishing college to 25? What can someone get from that?
So it depends if you want to go on apprenticeship schemes. So that would, the EHCP would still be engaged with an apprenticeship scheme.
Okay.
If there's additional learning. So education is defined by case law as anything that educates and trains, which is why we put into section F all of the occupational therapy and the speech and language therapy, because it may not be teaching them maths, for example, but what it is teaching them is regulation, fine motor skills, speech, etc. So it educates and trains, and that's sort of a gateway to the more traditional learning. So we even put in for our most severe children, for example, learning to tie your shoelaces, or learning how to make a cup of tea, for example, because for some of our kids at the age of 23, 24, that's what they're learning. They're trying to learn life skills. Yeah. So it depends, you know, education changes for every child, and what that child needs to learn changes. So, you know, I had when I was working for the LA, I think we had a plan in place for a young girl who wanted to be a hairdresser. So we were engaging with, so that plan continued with that salon, and she was having, you know, certain things in place to help her with the college and the salon together, because that's what she wanted to do. So that's how it's just university that the Equality Act kicks in. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. So same family from the last question. We did briefly discuss this earlier in the week, actually, and this was with regards to the fact that she has non-epileptic seizures, and they were going away on a trip, and due to health and safety, they didn't want to take her. I will add that she did get to go on said trip, but where do families stand with situations like this?
Okay, so I mean, generally the local authority, if you've got a plan, and the college on behalf of the local authorities, public body, will have to put into place reasonable adjustments. So what can they do in order to make that trip safe for her? They need to, if you think about reasonable adjustments, it's not making everybody the same. So it's because someone, and I always do this, because your child or someone has a disadvantage, it's putting into place additional, provision or something in addition to give them an advantage, to make sure they're on the same playing field. So it's not so that everybody is the same. It's giving them that advantage so they start off at a similar position to their peers. So, for example, do they need an extra chaperone to come on that trip? Not to hold that person's hand, because I imagine that they're in, they're sort of teenagers, late teenagers, early teenagers, but just to make sure, do they need to make sure those chaperones have training in first aid to make sure that that trip is safe for that young person? These are the type of things that I'm talking about. If they say absolutely not, then it's a disability discrimination claim. With disability discrimination claims, clients say to me and say, this has happened, for example, I didn't get to go on a trip and they've said no and whatnot. What am I going to gain from a disability discrimination claim? I say, well, at the end, what we get is a finding of discrimination. Now, there's no compensation at the end of it, but which is why a lot of the time some of my clients do want to go ahead with a disability discrimination claim, but more often than not, what I advise is, well, why don't we use that money that you've got, that you want to spend, obviously, on maybe getting an education and healthcare plan for them, so that things like this don't happen in the future, because that's going to benefit our girl. That's going to make sure that, for example, any other trips in the future, there is a trained chaperone that will go with her, because that's what's in section F, and we can force that on the college and the local authority, firstly, and the college, secondly, in the future, because if they say no, we're not prepared to do that for you. So, well, it's in her plan, so I'm going to go to tribunal, and I'm going to go, to the High Court and force you to do it, because it's necessary, because it's in the plan, because that's the law. So that's how I would tackle it. And it's kind of links back to the first question, is it worth getting the plan? That's another reason why it's worth getting the plan, because they have to put that provision into place. At the moment with the college, they can have an additional chaperone, they may not. I know it's great that our girl went on the trip, but easily the college could have just said, thanks for your concern, but no, we can't do it.
Definitely. No, that's great. Okay. Yeah. The EHC plan is not specified or quantified, so school has rejected my son. I'm awaiting tribunal now. Can I still contact my local authority to tell them that I have found a school that will take him, or wait until the tribunal date? My son is currently at home.
Okay. So I assume this person's in live tribunal proceedings, and there's zero school on the table from the local authority, but you've now found a school that are willing to offer you a place. Yes, let the local authority know. Say, this is my school of preference. Here's the offer letter. Please accept, so that we can settle this matter. So just because you've got live tribunal proceedings, don't forget that I mean, from our perspective as lawyers, and you know, this is our bread and butter. We always try and settle a tribunal before a final hearing, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to try and agree with the local authority. So it may be that the local authority is struggling to find him or her a place anyway, and if you come up with a place and say, here's my offer letter, we've got somewhere, that's brilliant. And they say, well, yeah, okay, fine, because we couldn't find anywhere. That section I dealt with. All you've got to deal with at the tribunal then is sections B and F. You've got to look at the wording. So for sure, tell the local authority, say, and send the offer letter as well.
Yeah,
I would say.
Perfect. They're not in the Zoom, so they'll obviously watch that on the playback. But I think that's really, really helpful. 2 questions regarding private schools. Different people, but I'm going to go with this one first. If your child attends private school and is in year 9, would it be worth going through the EHCP process or just working with the school? What would the benefit be to having the EHCP in place? School are happy to support the referral. There was a question though that because they are a private school, that the local authority might not support this, as they would have to pay school fees if the EHCP was in place. Can you let me know if this is correct?
Yes. So I would say if your child needs an education and healthcare plan, apply for one. That is part of, if it is granted and it is deemed that that school is suitable and it is named in section I, then yes, the local authority have to pay school fees for you. It is highly likely that the local authority may kick up a stink and may refuse to either assess, issue, or name your school of preference. They may at the very end sort of, so you've got 3 rights of appeal. It might be actually useful for me to explain that to everybody. So when you make an application for an education and healthcare needs assessment, you make the application and the local authority says yes or no. If they say no, you have a right of appeal to the tribunal. If they say yes, they go on and do those assessments. They then have another decision whether or not it's necessary to issue your child with an education healthcare plan. If they say no, you have a right of appeal to the tribunal. If they say yes, they use those assessment reports that they've prepared to draft a draft education healthcare plan. They send it to you, you comment, they finalise. When they finalise, you've got another right of appeal. Now, it may be, if you're lucky and you get through all of those stages and you've got a final plan, the local authority haven't named your private school or the school that your child goes to, but they've named a local mainstream that they think can meet needs. Obviously, that's something that you would appeal because your child is settled in their independent school. They're getting all of the provision that they reasonably require. They just needed a little bit more, and you're going to need obviously your expert evidence to back that up. I would say make sure your experts go into your independent school, wherever your child is, to do the assessment and comment on the environment and whether that's suitable. Your experts, I would say, send to the school that the local authority are recommending as well, or are looking to name, and comment on the environment in that school as well, because what that achieves is you've got evidence from an unbiased independent person, an educational psychologist, SALT or OT, saying yes, this child is settled, it is a suitable environment, this independent school, for all of these reasons. I've had a look at this school, I've spoken to their SENCO, I've had a look at the environment, it's too big, it's too noisy, whatever it is that they're going to put down in their report, and you've got evidence to show a tribunal when you're appealing, that's not suitable, this is suitable, please can you name our school? And then yes, the local authority will be responsible for the fees of that school, but it's highly likely that they will kick up a stink.
Okay, we've actually got Leanne here who had sent the question in. Do you want to unmute, Leanne? I can see that you've raised your hand, so I'm assuming you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to check, and because it would be detrimental to his mental health, is that any grounds to be on? Because he's already under CAMS. So with the schools, it's taken that he went to this particular school a year.
Oh, Leanne, sorry, your signal's
Which
really
one?
bad. Leanne,
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's a bit better.
Okay, because the child is under CAMS already, I think it would be detrimental to move him because of his mental health. It's taken this long to get him settled, and he's not settled. He's obviously, there's things that are happening. Would we be able to show evidence with that to support not having to change schools to a different one?
Certainly. I think that's good evidence, in fact, and the fact that he's with CAMS is also good evidence. If they've got sort of reports, or I think they do summaries, you know, partway through when they're assessing, or partway through when they're giving sort of any provision, submit that as well. I still think that despite that, I think it's good evidence, and I would say get your experts to comment on that. Obviously, tell your experts all of that as well. Show them the reports from CAMS and the letters from CAMS. Despite that, though, it's good evidence. It's good argument. It is common, however, for the local authority to see that and still say, doesn't matter, our local mainstream can still meet need, and name it. But that is something for the tribunal appeal. I think it's with such a change of fees, because they're, you know, look, the law says that the local authority must name the school of parental preference unless one of three exceptions apply. The first is that school is unsuitable for the age, aptitude, or ability of the young person. The second is that to name to admit that child would be incompatible with the efficient education of others. Now that's when you get a space argument with full, etc., although it's a bit more complex than that. And the third is that to admit that child would go against the efficient use of resources. Now that's the money argument. So if your school fees are, for example, I don't know, £30,000 per annum, and to send your boy to, or your girl to, the local mainstream school is going to cost, I don't know, 10,000 usually, because that's sort of that standard admissions, 10,000, maybe plus a little bit of extra stuff. Let's say 15. You've got a gap there of £15,000. Anything between £5,000 to £7,000 difference, the local authority says it's not an efficient use of our resources. Now, what you can do is you can say, well, with all of your expert evidence, of course, here's all of my expert reports, and my child needs X amount of occupational therapy and X amount of speech and language therapy, and I want that put into section F. Now, for the local authority to put that into place at your local mainstream school, how much is that going to cost? So in reality, that sort of £14,000 is coming up and going towards coming within that £7,000 to £5,000, in which case you can say, well, the difference between my school of preference and the reality of the costs with your school that you want to name, with all of the additional provision that my child reasonably requires, is actually nominal. It's between £5,000 to £7,000. So the law says, please name my school. But Leanne, I'm not in the business of giving false hope or beating around the bush. It's highly likely that when they see an independent school, they might say no initially.
Leanne's re-raised her hand, so go on, Leanne.
Sorry, I'll try to. Also, if I said to them that I was quite happy to pay his school fees, because obviously we've already been paying them, can they give us the EHCP without paying his school fees? And he's also he's going for his ADOS, so he's going to be diagnosed with autism as well. So I think that's going to affect him changing schools as well. So yeah, my question is, if I carried on paying the fees, would they still be able to give me an EHCP?
that's something that you can negotiate with. So sometimes we do negotiate and say to the local. So for example, with any school that's named in section I, the local authority is also responsible for transporting that young person to and from the school. And you find, I don't know what the distance is, for example, but you find that the transport fees can amount to really quite high. So sometimes I've seen transport fees for about £20,000 to £30,000 because usually they have to pay for a taxi. So sometimes we keep that in our back pocket and we'll say, you know what, it's quite common. I don't think I'm disclosing any sort of trade secrets here, to say, look, you pay fees, local authority, we'll pay transport, you're not responsible for it, let's settle this now. And sometimes they say yes. Sometimes it requires a little bit more than that. So sometimes my clients say to me, well, you know what, let me pay for half the school fees and see what they say, because if I pay for half the school fees, it's pretty much the same as them naming their own mainstream school, and I'm okay with paying half the fees. So that's all in negotiation. But what I would say is, from a tactical sort of strategy point of view, and I hope there's no local authority officers that are watching this, don't go in with that first of all, because if you've got your expert evidence saying that your school is suitable, then at tribunal you've got your expert evidence, and that's something to put forward. That's good evidence to put forward. So I would say, see how it goes first of all. Keep sort of that negotiation in your back pocket, and if it looks like the local authority aren't backing down towards the final after the final evidence deadline, when you've submitted all of your professional evidence, maybe sort of make an offer without prejudice. Without prejudice means behind closed doors, and say, local authority, if you name my school, I'll pay £5,000 towards school fees, and I'll make sure that, and I'll be responsible for the transportation. Let's not go to tribunal, let's settle this here and now. So it is an option that's open for you.
Okay, brilliant. And that brings us on quite nicely to the next question, which is around, hang on, let me word this. Basically, in short, do private schools legally have to follow an EHCP plan?
Well, several things in my mind, thinking time. So first of all, it's the local authority that are responsible for putting into place everything in that plan. So if they've named, and that brings me on to the second thing. So there's a school is an independent school is either section 41 approved or it's not section 41 approved. If it is section 41 approved, then when they are named in section I of a plan, they have to admit that child. So the local authority names them, they have to admit. If they are not section 41 approved, then they do not have to admit that child. And a different law kicks in, section 9 of the Education Act kicks in that 9 or 19, I always get the numbers mixed up. Douglas is always so good at remembering all of the numbers of the sections, and I'm really bad, but I always know what it says, but just the numbers always go. It's a different type of test that goes in, and they don't have to admit. So you have to have the school's support, so they have to want to admit your child, to then say to the tribunal, here's my offer letter from Special Independent School. They're happy to admit, they're not on the section 41 approved list, so we're all okay with naming them in section I. What I'd say is, if they're not offering you a place anyway, and they don't think they're suitable, do you really want your child to go somewhere that doesn't want them or doesn't think that they can meet needs? But I think the crux of the question that's being asked is, if there's detail in that plan and my child goes to an independent school, must that independent school put it into place? So first of all, again, it's the local authority's responsibility to make sure that all of that provision listed in section F is being provided. But if the school are refusing to facilitate that, then it's not something that we can complain to the school about. That's for the local authority to ensure. but then we risk the local authority saying, well, it's not a suitable placement, so we're going to change the school that's named in section I because they're not working with us here. That's the risk of it.
None of these questions about my children, but I'm going to throw a question in based on that just to open that up a bit more. So let's say, a little bit like Leanne's situation, got a child in a private school, apply for an EHCP because they need to change worse and whatever, agree that we will continue to cover the fees, but we just want to make sure the extra provisions are put in place legally. As long as the school's happy with them staying, and supporting them, but legally they have to follow that plan.
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Yeah, so if my child, I'm going to use Harrison. No, I won't. I'll use Hayden because he's in year 7, so we've still got quite a bit of school to go. So let's say we're already in the school.
Yep.
They are happy to support him. We get an EHCP plan in place through the local authority based on the fact that we're continue paying the fees, just to fast track this through.
Yep.
What they state needs to occur and to be in place, a private school does still legally have to follow that plan. Is that right?
Well, like I said, the recourse for that provision, so let's say that there's some speech and language therapy in there, for example, 30 minutes per week by a qualified speech and language therapist that's in section F. We need that to be put into place, 30 minutes a week. Okay, the school is saying, I can't put that into place for you, Sarah, because of XYZ reason. The local authority is saying to the school that it's the local authority's responsibility to make sure that our child receives that 30 minutes of SALT a week. They have to then pay for that to be put into place, if that's what it takes. If our private school doesn't have a speech and language therapist that comes in, for example, the local authority have to facilitate that. Now, it depends on what the school is saying. If the school is saying we don't have the money to pay for that, then it's local authority's door. We're knocking on local authority's door saying you need to pay them because it's in section F. If school is saying it's just too difficult, it's going to disrupt the class, it's going to be difficult for us, we don't have a space to facilitate it, that's when I'd be saying there's not much the local authority can really do because the school's just not on board with that. And we can't say to school, you have to do this. We'd be saying, local authority, you have to facilitate it. There's nothing for them to do. It's like a triangle. So local authority would say, well, it's not suitable for school then. Because we're giving them the money. Here's the money. Do it. But school's saying, no, it's not really working with our model.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next one. Where do we stand as parents when our child is continuously given detentions and exclusions for tics, impulsive actions, and other Tourette's or neurodiverse related behaviours?
So that's a DD claim. That's a disability discrimination claim. Unfortunately, I'm really sorry to hear that, and I always get so upset whenever I hear this. I had an initial consultation this week with a young person who has severe ADHD, and he was constantly in detention, threats of being expelled, etc., which always makes me really, really sad. But it's a disability discrimination claim. Again, what we're getting is a discrimination claim. We're not getting anything tangible, I don't think. If they get excluded, then what we can do is we can get reinstatement. That's really what we're getting from a disability discrimination claim. But I would say in a situation like you've described, what would maybe do the trick is a bit of a threatening letter from some legal people to say you shouldn't be doing this, because if he's, I don't know what he's presenting with, but for example, if he's using obscene language in the classroom, that is obviously a reason that is obviously deriving from his tics.
I'll give you a couple of examples because I know the said client. So first off, I'll add that they've had training from multiple agencies around Tourette's and neurodiverse behaviours, including disinhibition. They've had 14-page reports stating how to support an individual and why they're presenting this in this way in some lessons, not others. The kind of emails that are coming home almost daily are calling out in class, answering me back, refusing to work, which has been explained as this is a shutdown from overwhelm, not him choosing to be rebellious.
Yeah.
He is given detentions for not writing enough work. Well, he physically can't write the same as his peer group because he's ticking, he's also undiagnosed ADHD, but I think that that's on the pathway. Schools suspect other things, but they're still not implementing stuff with regards to, well, we think this or we think that, well, let's support him around that then. But they're not. He's constantly the bad kid. They tried to put him into a separate segment of the school, for the naughty kids. I'm going to keep my air quotes, which, good for him. He point blank said, I'm not one of those kids. I'm not smashing up the classroom. I'm not swearing at teachers in anger and violence, and he said, I don't want to be singled out. And the school have agreed to not put him there, but it's constant. It's absolutely constant. And he's not the only child. I happen to know another parent with a child with ADHD, same school, exactly the same situation. I think he's actually excluded or has been.
Right. I mean, I really get so frustrated at these stories because I feel like schools should just know better. They should just understand better, especially if you're training them as well. They've received training, they've received reports. They should just know. But we are where we are with that. That's my gripe with schools and a lack of training. I would say what you need to do is, it's a disability discrimination claim, and it's a threat of disability discrimination claim beforehand. If you want your child to be reinstated, then you have to go down that route. That's the only way. And there's not really much else to do. There is not really much else to do. I would say.
Is that your doorbell? Do you need to quickly allow
That is my doorbell. Do you mind?
No, quickly let them in.
I'm really sorry.
Okay, whilst Salase is grabbing her parcel, has anyone got any questions that they haven't sent over previously that you either want to drop in the chat box or want to kind of just bring to my attention now, and I can bring it up when she's back. Oh, she's back already. Look at that. Speedy. I'll meet you again. Okay, I was just seeing if anyone else had any other questions to send over, so once I finish these, but no one had a chance to type anything. But honestly, type it in and we'll add them to the questions. So back to that school then. So I think they've had a little bit of a shake up, because I would say that things have randomly turned on their head a tiny bit. And I think there was a little bit of a forceful letter that went in recently. I'm not completely sure. But I just don't understand how a school can get away with it, because this child is actually the younger brother of obviously an older sibling who has similar and same diagnoses, and they completely destroyed him as well. So
I mean, look, a DD claim, what's it going to do? We don't get compensation at the end of it. You can complain to their governors, but what a DD claim does is it makes them spend money on their lawyers trying to defend it. But obviously you're also spending money on lawyers, potentially, if you've instructed lawyers to do that for you at the same time. It doesn't look great on their records for their governors, etc. And if we get a finding of discrimination, it is a finding of discrimination. The actual recourse that you're going to get from a DD claim is a reinstatement to the school. So I mean, I hate to say it, but there's no punishment as such. Apart from maybe some bad press and stuff, which isn't really. I mean, it's not punishment. Let's face it. And it is a flaw. And I always say to my clients, do we really want our kids to go somewhere that isn't suitable for them?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't, you know.
This comes back as well to Leanne's point earlier, and that's even when, I mean, not that the school is bad for Leanne's child, but moving them is sometimes risky, isn't it? On the fact of, is it going to happen again? They're losing their friendships, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a really hard one. But is there, if multiple people were to claim disability discrimination, is there any kind of, I don't know, 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing? What is kind of Ofsted, anything, I don't know, is there any repercussion where the school would finally buck up their ideas, even if we can't do anything for the children of today, at least the children of the future? I
mean, you know, if there's so many DD claims that are coming in, then, you know, someone might get in trouble and someone's contract might mysteriously end. Maybe that, but I mean, there's nothing external that can happen. It may make the governor sit up and think we've actually got an institutional problem here at this school. It's not just a one-off. This is a culture thing. You know, if there is an Ofsted, then Ofsted always talk to parents, so be around if there's sort of an instant Ofsted report or officer coming in and make that known to Ofsted. Can we let Ofsted know beforehand? It's not a safeguarding issue necessarily that you need to contact Ofsted for.
What about?
I have had people contact Ofsted in the past to explain their gripes, and then maybe an inspection has followed in the next 6 months sometimes. But it's not. That's not that. I mean, that may have repercussions on the school. It's not going to help. It's not going to help my child now, though. I think pragmatically, the most beneficial thing for that child is this school isn't understanding me. It's not understanding my child. I mean, you can have a sort of sit and I'm sure you've done this though, Sarah. I'm sure you've advised this, sit and have a conversation, offer training, etc. to the school. But if they're just not gonna.
It's really heartbreaking because I had a random parent contact me about local schools that they're looking for, and one of the top schools that they would like in was this school. And they were like, their Senko was, you know, saying this and saying that and saying this, and I was having to like keep my professional hat on, but actually also be like, please don't, it's lie, it's actually lie, you know, it's not, it's lies. I can't sugarcoat it in any way. And I was just, you know, I said, I recommend you explore some other schools and, you know, maybe, you know, don't jump into this. And I was really trying, like I say, to stay professional, but I literally wanted to just pick up the phone and call them and be like, do not go there, because I know so many kids now who are struggling in the same school.
Sometimes it's a change of staff as well. So I've had sort of one school that we used to place children in quite frequently because their Senko and their management team were really good and they really understood SEN. There's been a bit of a shake up. There's a new head teacher in, and it's just changed. And I'm getting initial inquiries through for this school, and everyone's like, oh, it's not working because this is what they did to my daughter with autism, and this is what they did to my son with ADHD. And I'm like, that's not the school we knew sort of 12 months ago at all. So sometimes it's a change of staffing as well, when, you know, those people that have come to me are saying, well, I've tried everything in the book. I've had a conversation. I've offered to pay for training for their teachers, like me as a parent, which isn't their responsibility at all. But my child is declining so much in this environment that I think there's no other option but for me to move them. And sometimes the short-term difficulty of that transition and settling is worth the long-term happiness once that child is settled. And only you know your child, you know fully well. So it's you that has to make that decision.
I think that it's spot on what you say. I mean, if we just come back to mine, my eldest, she was neurotypical until the pandemic, then lost the ability to mask, and we came out the other
Yeah.
side, autistic, ADHD, extreme anxiety. That was in year 9, and then she struggled through GCSEs and vomiting on the way to school, sleeping in
Oh,
school
no.
around lessons, sleeping for 24 hours, at weekends because she was just burnt out so much. And I was terrified with her starting college just in September because I thought, how is she going to cope? How's she going to make new friends where she
Yeah.
burns out? She's absolutely blossoming.
Good.
Absolutely.
That's so nice to hear.
It just shows how the environments are it does make such a difference. I mean, the school that the kids are at, they're brilliant with the boys, but they were absolutely diabolical with Freya. There was,
Yeah.
well, I blew up there so many times because of how they were with Freya. And it just shows, like you say, how the environments can impact them so much.
Yeah, it can. I mean, I've got kids, who are school refusing, for example. They can't go into school. Not that it's not really a choice, is it? But they just can't go into school, because of the environment, because of the trauma that environment sort of envisages. They've got PTSD. They don't know how to manage their feelings. But then you change the school, you get them in half a day here for a little bit, full day there for a little bit, and start to build it up. And I get phone calls a year later from parents, and they are blossoming and they're doing well and they're taking GCSEs, and you think, blimey, like how it's like listening to a different person.
Yeah, no, it is definitely. I've just come up in goosebumps because someone's just commented that it's been exactly the same for their daughter moving over to college, and I know the struggles they were having at school, and now just doing fantastically. She's being treated as she should be,
Yeah.
and it does make a difference. And even like some kids who are in a school, who in some lessons they blossom, but in other lessons they don't, and they're the problematic lessons. And because of the different behaviors, they think it's chosen because
Yeah.
it's not across the board, when actually no, it's that classroom or that teacher or that peer group
Yeah.
aren't
Yeah.
okay. They're not supporting, supportive or working for them in that.
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So I'd say look at a number of things. Like, so for example, sometimes I have kids that struggle with the smell of the science labs because they're a bit pungent, or I have kids who struggle with maybe history because of the complexity of the language that subject offers, for example, or something. Or with my dyslexic kids who struggle with obviously the literacy because of the long text of reading and having to write lots of things out. But I'd say if you are struggling with those those pockets of subjects, have a look at exactly what that is. Is it that when a laptop is provided, for example, that issue goes away? And my
We've
kid,
tried.
yeah, no.
We've tried. We know the problems. They just don't want to hear it.
Okay. Well, it's very case specific. So I would always say, if you're having those problems, and I'm sure that's what you've already recommended, Sarah, but have a chat. Have a chat with the Senko, have a chat with the teacher, say this is what we do at home, or you know what, in maths he gets on really well. What's the maths teacher doing? Let's see what they're doing to try and mirror what they're doing. Obviously that can hurt some people's ego sometimes, but so we've got to put it a little bit more fluffy than that. But yeah, just try and talk it out.
Yeah, no, okay, thank you, that's great. Okay, and another question is, how much does it cost to apply for an EHCP?
Oh, so if you're doing it by yourself, then it's completely free, and you can do it by yourself. But there are charities that can assist you. There are solicitors. We do it, for example, and and we have independent advocates that can assist you. If you wanted us to do it, we would have to set you up with a free initial consultation. We do sort of 30 minutes for a free initial consultation if you wanted to speak to me or one of the team. We'd get you to fill out a form. We'd have a look at sort of what your case entails, and then at the end of that initial consultation, after we've given you a little bit of advice about what we think moving forward, we'll give you a cost estimate on what we think your case is moving forward. But frankly, I mean, it could be completely free. You could get the school to help you.
So if we had to provide, I don't know, an ed psych, for example, obviously,
Yeah.
if I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if school are the ones kind of going, we need an EHCP, they provide the ed psych, do they? Or would we still have
No. So with the needs assessment processes, you make the application for the needs assessment. You get all the information that you currently have, and the whole process of the whole purpose of the needs assessment is that the local authority are assessing and producing those reports. So that's what you're asking for. You're asking for those reports. We also get our reports as well, our independent reports, but not quite at that stage. At an appeal stage, we need those. So we book them in and make sure they're around for when we need to go to tribunal, because these reports can be outdated as well sometimes. So, for example, if my girl is in year 8 and the local authority are looking at a report that they did when she was in year 5, I'm going to be saying that is not relevant in any way, shape or form to my girl anymore, because of the time and because of the fact that she's matured so much and she's changed so much. The reports we're looking for the needs assessment, local authority will do them. I would always advise, if you're going to go to tribunal, you get your own independent reports as well. They tend to cost between sort of £1,000 to £1,200 plus VAT here or there. That's different depending on each expert.
Okay, lovely. And correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I am wrong. EHCPs are based on needs, not on diagnosis, or do they have to be diagnosed?
They don't have to be diagnosed, no. So it depends on what your child needs. So if you've got, it depends on what the professional reports say, to be completely honest with you, on what needs to be put into place. So if the test for issuing an education and healthcare plan is if it's necessary, and that's judged by what provision needs to be put into place that goes over and above that which a normal mainstream school can provide. So, for example, if our professional reports say she's got auditory processing, for example, she needs to be in a small nurturing environment with no more than 8 students in the classroom. That's over and above what a maintained mainstream can provide, because they have class sizes of 30, for example. So that's an indicator that we need a plan. So I would say, like I said before, make it easy for the decision makers, and that includes if the decision makers is the judge and the tribunal panel. Get your evidence in place. Say this is what the evidence says. And the tribunal, in an SEND tribunal, always remember that your evidence is king. The tribunal will make a decision in your child's best interests based on the evidence that it has before them at that time. So they won't look at past conduct. They won't say, sometimes I have parents, this happened, that happened, and I said that I'm sorry. Obviously, that's really difficult. But when I've seen that be presented to a tribunal will only ever say, I can't discuss it, I can't look at any of that. Let's look at the here and now. What does your girl need now moving forward? What can we put into place? Let me have a look at the evidence. What are we going to put in section F to help her moving forward? The here and now. To get your evidence, I'd say that is probably my sort of biggest tip for today. Make sure whatever you're doing that you get your evidence in place. And obviously if you're going to get that evidence, because local authorities reports that they get, they're going to be woolly. You're going to be probably really angry when they come through, because it's probably going to say something like, you know, what is it? Quality first teaching is going to be suitable for this young person, and make sure that she sits at the front of the class so she can listen. It's going to be really woolly.
Just where someone needs to sit with Tourette's, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is behind them. Yeah, really helpful.
Exactly. So you're going to be a little bit angry when you receive those, just forewarning you. But when you get your reports, make sure they are specified and quantified. So to the point where they're specifying and quantifying, maybe even if it's necessary, qualifications of the teachers. So if you need someone who's got qualifications in dealing with children with Tourette's, or experience at the very least, then that needs to go in.
Okay, that's lovely. I've actually just seen the time. I reckon we could talk all day, couldn't we? On the. I'm so sorry. I know that I said I wouldn't keep you for more than an hour.
Not at all. I'm really enjoying it.
Good. Well, in that case, any final points before we let Salisay go? Has anyone got anything they'd like to ask quickly? I'll take this. Oh, yep. Go on, Leanne. Hang on. Let me unmute you.
Does it make a difference whether you make a parental application or whether school make it? Is there more ground that it comes from school, or shall we just go ahead and make the application anyway? They are supporting us, so I just didn't know whether to do it myself or let them do it.
I would say, even if you are going to do it yourself, I would say make sure that you have the school support. So make sure you have a support letter, because the first thing that PANA will always going to ask are, what does the school say? So make sure you have a support letter from the school. I mean, definitely you look at it as well. Look over it. Sometimes it's easier if it comes from the school. Make it collaborative, I'd say. Make it collaborative. So even if they send it through, they can send it through. You can make sure that you've had a look at it and you're happy with it. Put in all of the provision that you've put into place, everything that the school's put into place as well. Make sure it looks at cognition and learning, communication and interaction, sensory and physical, social, emotional, mental health. Make sure you go through all of those needs as well, and detail what your child's struggling with in each of those subcategories, so that we've got a full application and full support from the school as well. Do it collaboratively.
Yeah, they are very supportive. They're just waiting for his autism diagnosis to come through. That's what they said. So they was going to start in January, but then when I spoke to IAS, IAS said, don't wait, go ahead. And that was the bit where I thought, do I apply myself or do I apply with school? Because school they're supporting us, that they are brilliant. I've already been through an EHCP with my younger son's school, and they was awful. I had to cry every step of the way. So because I'm having the support put in place, I don't want to upset them. I do want to work with them. So with the time frame, I was thinking, do I just go ahead or do I wait and not upset?
I would say, look, it's a fine line, but talk to them about it. I mean, don't stay silent about it. I would recommend you put the application in, because this is a 20-week process, and if you need to appeal, it's going to be in between any of those 3 stages. It's going to be even longer. So if you put it in now, you're saving time whilst you're waiting, but also you can say in your application, he's on the pathways, he's had an assessment, this is when we're waiting to hear back. And it's highly likely, we've been told, that he is going to get the diagnosis. But you don't necessarily need the diagnosis to make the application. I'd say speak to the school and say to them, this is what I'm thinking. I had a conversation with a few people, and this is what we want to do. We'd be really happy if you was on board. What do you think, etc. If you sound like you've got a good relationship with them, so I think it'll probably work.
Lovely. All right, thank you so much. Well, I'm going to end that there. Thank you so much for giving up your time and answering these questions. It's been really, really helpful. And I think, a lot of those questions, they're all what parents are dying to know. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. Really, really amazing. So thank you. I've definitely learned a thing or two as well.
I'm so grateful for you guys for tuning in and listening to me. And sort of, if you guys have any questions that you think of later on, then send them through to Sarah, and I can answer them later on if you know something pops into your heads. And happy to do these more often if it's really helpful to everybody.
That'd be amazing. Honestly, it'd be brilliant. And what I'll do as well, when I share the video in the members group, I will your email in case anyone wants to do the free 30-minute consultation. With the set up. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That is more than okay. I'll give you. I think you should have the email address, but I can give you the email address. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
See you later. I'm just going to stop recording.
Yeah.